Hi everyone, this is gonna be a very chill video with minimal b-roll, so feel free to grab a cup of coffee, tea or a glass of water and let's talk about books in translation. So it is August, or I hope that it still is by the time that I upload this video, and in the internet bookish world it means that it's Women in Translation Month. I first heard of this initiative in Twitter and I researched a little and the light is changing, so this is gonna be a fun challenge. Anyway, while I was trying to come up with the list of books to recommend, I realized that I have very little variety in this regard, meaning there's not a lot of books that I have read that are not originally written in English by women. So to compensate that, I've also come up with a list of books that I will be adding to my to be read pile, and that will be the second part of the video. So let's get started. The first book that I want to recommend is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, translated by Stephen Snyder and first published in 1994. Yoko Ogawa is a very prolific Japanese author, and she's published at least 50 works combining fiction and non-fiction. And in this book, she's telling the story of an unnamed island where things are constantly disappearing. And there is no telling what's gonna disappear next, but there is this mysterious force that forces people to forgo any memory associated with these things. There is something really unique about the concept of disappearing in this book, because things continue to exist, but any feelings or memories associated with them are wiped out. So for these inhabitants, there is no hesitation in getting rid of these objects, and there are no feelings or memories associated with them anymore. And it can be anything, it can be something super abstract or something super concrete. But as the story progresses and their memories keep fading away, there is something essential that is lost to human identity as well. So if you're in the mood for a slow-paced, reflective dystopia, then this is the book for you. The next book that I want to recommend is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, that's a mouthful, by Olga Tokarczuk and translated by Antonia Lloyd-Jones and first published in 2009. So Olga Tokarczuk is a very successful Polish author who recently won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2019, if I remember correctly. This is a mystery/thriller novel that takes place in a Polish village close to the Czech border. And there lives Janina, who's the main character. She's a bit eccentric, and among other things, she likes translating poems by William Blake in her spare time, and she also takes care of the houses of wealthy Warsaw residents. And the whole novel revolves around a murder of a close neighbor of hers and how it unsettles the village. I'm always very careful when trying to explain mystery novels because I don't want to give away anything, and I think they are best enjoyed the least that you know about them. But I would say that what I liked most about the book was not the mystery itself, but the eccentricity and the intelligence of the main character and how others perceive her. And the last book that I want to mention as a recommendation is There Is No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Kikuko Tsumura, translated by Barton and first published in 2020. Kikuko Tsumura is a Japanese writer as well, and out of the novels that I mentioned in this list, this is the most light-hearted one. So this is contemporary fiction with a touch of magical realism, which I personally really enjoy. It's kind of like my comfort genre. I realized I read a lot of contemporary mixed with magical realism. Anyway, this book tells the story of a young woman dealing with burnout, and eventually she sets out to look for a new job, so she goes to the employment agency to find a job that meets her very specific criteria, namely that it is close to her home and that there is very little thinking involved. So her intention clearly is to avoid getting emotionally attached to the job or to her co-workers. And as a consequence of that, she ends up in some shady jobs and shady circumstances. But I personally really enjoyed her observations of office dynamics and work life in general. I think it was very relatable. And in any case, the point of the book is not whether she finds this perfect job or not, but the transformation that the main character goes through and what she learns about herself in the process. And yeah, I think there's only one book by her that's been translated so far, which is a shame. I would love to read more novels by this author in the future. And these are some of the books that I recently added to my to-be-read pile thanks to this initiative. I'm also gonna try to explain why I think they will be an interesting read and how I found them. First, I have Memories from Moscow to the Black Sea by Teffi and translated by Anne-Marie Jackson, Irina Steinberg, Robert Chandler and Elizabeth Chandler. So Teffi is a Russian writer, and I recently learned about this very famous Russian author thanks to the channel The Lamp in the Library. I will leave the link down below. This is one of her most well-known books. It's a non-fiction book, a memoir, where she talks about her experience during the last months that she lived in Russia and Ukraine before she was forced to live in exile. It turns out that she was invited to read from her work in Odessa, but then she was never able to come back to Russia. So I expect this book to deal with her account of the political turmoil of the time, but I am interested in finding out more about her personal life, and also I want to delve into her writing style and especially the satirical tone that has been praised by many. Then I have Things Remembered and Things Forgotten by Kyoko Nakajima, translated by Ginny, Takemori and I am Macdonald. Unfortunately, I cannot really remember how I found out about this book, but it's been in my TBR pile for a while and it's a new release. So I assumed that I heard about it when the publisher was doing some marketing for the release of this book. In any case, this is another contemporary fiction novel set in Tokyo, and it's a collection of short stories dealing with memory, which in my opinion is one of the most fascinating themes in literature. So this novel in particular emphasizes the contrast between wartime Tokyo and its modern culture nowadays. And there is this hint of magical realism that I really enjoy, as I mentioned before. So this sounds like a very interesting and probably also very sad read. And finally, I have Flights by Olga Tokarczuk, translated by Jennifer Croft. I have been meaning to pick up this book ever since I read Drive Your Plow of the Bones of the Dead, but I've never gotten around it for some reason. And this is a collection of short stories that deal with reflections on travel with an in-depth exploration of the human body, broaching life, death, motion and migration. I like how the book seems to revolve around the concept of being a traveler in a broad sense of the word, and that's also one of my favorite themes in literature. And reading the brief summaries of the stories, I think there's gonna be an eccentric and quirky read, so I would expect this book to surprise me in the way that these stories unravel. So these are my recommendations and some recent books that I rediscovered thanks to this initiative. I would love to hear your recommendations. I don't think I have any sci-fi or fantasy books, and I would love to add those to the list. I will leave the links with more info in the description down below, but in the meantime, if you enjoyed this kind of video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps, and I'll see you soon.